Co-op. We appreciate everybody's support of all of these webinars that we've been doing. This is the last in our series for the winter of 22, 23. And we've really enjoyed this partnership. It's really valuable to us. Education is a big part of our mission. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Lisa. And just by way of a short introduction, Lisa and I actually met on Facebook when she had not yet moved to Bethlehem, and we connected, and then we met in person at the outreach table for the co-op at the Rose Garden. So the food co-op really does make for good neighbors and helps us connect with folks. So without any further, I'm glad to welcome Lisa Lubin to our presentation tonight.
Great. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Matthew. I'm excited to be here as a new resident of Bethlehem and excited to be a part of this. And excited to shop at the food co-op once it opens. And I just wrote down to come to the library because I must meet Spike and wish him or her a happy birthday. So I am the executive director of Crate Free USA. It's a nonprofit. We're actually based outside of Chicago. And I'll tell you a little bit about our organization first, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. This nonprofit started about 10 years ago with the simple mission to improve the lives of animals raised for food. And we do this through education, outreach, and also retail campaigns. We have had some successful campaigns in the past, basically working with retailers, supermarket chains to change the suppliers they work with to get them to use better practices. For example, we had a campaign with Trader Joe's a few years ago, which was successful in asking them to phase out gestation crates for pigs from their supply chain, which they are doing. I think they're almost done with the phase out. So now, and I know there's not a Trader Joe's in the Lehigh Valley yet. I guess they have a big distribution center here, right? But not a store. But if you go into a Trader Joe's, you'll see the crate free label now on their packaging. So we had a petition with more than 500 signatures, and they were open to this, and we went out to their headquarters in California and met with them. And we work with other larger organizations that you probably have heard of, like the Humane Society, Mercy for Animals, World Animal Protection. One thing about our organization that attracted me to it is we are very pragmatic and very inclusive. We don't want to be exclusive. We are not vegan only or anything like that. Our whole main thing is to educate people on factory farming and what's going on, and get people to potentially eat less meat or source it from somewhere better. So we don't care about labels, which I think is nice, because I think there's the title of this webinar, a lot of people think it's all or nothing. Oh, I can't go vegan, that's too difficult, when you can just reduce and still make an impact. So we don't want to scare anyone away, because we want to help animals today. And so we can't wait for the world to go vegan. But the problem of factory farming still persists. It has a huge impact, as you all probably know, on billions of animals, people, health, the environment, and the communities that are nearby these factory farms. So a little bit about myself. As Carol mentioned, I'm a new Bethlehem resident. I just moved here about 6 months ago from Chicago. I'm a former broadcast journalist. I worked at ABC in Chicago. I'm also a travel and food writer. So I've always been very interested in food, and just been educating myself over the last few decades, which, so many things are kind of hidden. So you have to seek it out if you really want to understand where your food comes from. I'm also, because I was a TV producer, I have my own video consultancy and production company. I'm the executive director of Crate Free. And I'm a new board member of the local organization CAT, the Coalition for Appropriate Transportation, which is all about walking, biking, and public transit. And of course, I'm a lifelong animal lover. So many of us, I mean, again, people know kind of what's going on, but a vast majority of people don't really know where their food comes from. So when you ask someone, you know, to think of a farm, is this what you picture? And this is maybe an old school farm. And I'm sure there's some farms around here you can find like this, but the vast majority are not. Factory farms since World War II have grown enormously. The technology in farming has changed, and they really are factories. And this, for example, these are cage-free birds. This is cage-free in these huge buildings with massive amounts of chickens. And the difference is packaging in this country still uses a lot of marketing and still can have a, you know, beautiful looking farmhouse on there, or a happy pig or a happy chicken, when that's not the reality at all. This is the reality of pigs being raised for pork in this country in gestation crates. So that is a farm. So today in the US, 10 billion animals live on factory farms every year alone. And, you know, we're talking about the word farm, but they're not really farms at all anymore. They're factories. And 99% of the meat, dairy, and eggs that we go get at the supermarket comes from factory farms. Despite some advances, some changes, still there's such a demand for meat that we are a part of, and that is coming from factory farms. So every time we go to the supermarket and buy meat off the shelf, we are part of the problem. This is just showing the trajectory of meat consumption in the US. The total you can see is still going up, you know, per person, what is it, 200, almost 300 pounds a year in total types of meat. And everything is still going up, despite, you know, there's more veganism and it's more talked about, and there's Beyond Burgers, but it's still increasing. So, you know, one of the things we've learned so much about is this great disconnect, and something that the big ag and lobbyists and you know, the Pork Council and the Beef Council, that they've done such a great job of disconnecting people and not showing you what's really happening at these factory farms. And even through our own cultures and family gatherings and how we were raised. And it's, you know, I always say to people, it's understandable that because our whole lives, no one's really teaching us about this. In fact, we have started doing presentations somewhat similar to this for school groups, just so kids can understand where is their food coming from. Because, you know, you just think, oh, yummy bacon and hot dogs, and, you know, don't even necessarily, it's not even called pig, it's called pork. It has its own name. So there's this great disconnect through every direction, you know, even like I said, the marketing of things, the naming of things, even down to how meat and, you know, eating meat is masculine. And if you eat a salad, that's not masculine. And just all of this throughout the years of making it be wrong if someone doesn't want to eat meat, or is a vegan or a vegetarian or whatever, that's a bad thing, even though that person is trying to do the right thing for their health, for the animals, for the environment. So this is your bacon, and this is your pork right here. So the difference, of course, factory farms versus pasture raised. So like I was saying, trying to, even, you know, if you want to reduce your meat, but source it from somewhere that is pasture raised and not in a factory. So most pigs are raised in these gestation crates on the left. Crates so tiny they cannot turn around. They're designed that way intentionally, and they are impregnated and stay in these crates, give birth, and then they're impregnated again and again and again until they die. So it's a life of misery, really. There's a lot of studies on the distress it causes them. They're social animals. So it's just, and again, when something was like, 10 billion animals, it's also kind of hard to just becomes this massive number. And you have to just kind of think about your own pet, and how that would feel if this was happening to your dog and it's happening to an individual pig times a million. Similarly with hens, egg-laying hens, they are in battery cages. Now, this has been improving. A lot of retailers and fast food places have started to phase these out, so you'll hear more about cage-free, but battery cages are still being used for these chickens. And when something does say cage-free, this middle picture, that's what that is. It's still a cramped shed. And the other unfortunate thing is that there's no, unlike in Europe, where there's more legal, you have to use certain terminology. We can use marketing buzzwords. So you'll see cage-free, crate-free, pasture-raised. So cage-free is still these, chickens get like a 8x10 sheet of paper size to live on. Whereas if it's pastured on grass, that's the picture on the right, and it's more of a natural life, which is how, they can just be themselves. Like we sometimes say, living a normal life with one bad day, because the day of slaughter is stressful and never great, and usually having to be trucked somewhere, but at least they lived a normal life. Also genetic modification, which has gone on, which I won't go into in depth, but just how they've changed the rate of chickens, broiler chickens growth. So they've become so large that their little legs can't support them. Other things like beef grinding and grinding of male chicks. So as far as cows, all these products, dairy, milk, beef from a cow. And here is a factory farm lot, a feed lot on the left, no grass, all these cows in the mud and manure, as opposed to on a pasture on the right. So we strive to obviously, try to get farms to be more pasture raised and get people to buy meat from those farms, and get retailers to use suppliers that don't use cages and use more pasture raised. And here is baby calves, as you probably are aware of, these veal crates where they are taken from their mom, which is the whole dairy industry basically is built on, and in these short lives in these tiny crates. So what can we do about it? We'll talk about, as individuals, what we can do about it shortly. As far as public policy, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that you always hear about anti-cruelty laws, but these do not apply to farmed animals. Farmed animals are the most exploited and least protected animals on the planet. The only laws that help farm animals have to do with the transport, the 28-hour law, which is also kind of still a long time to be trucking across the country with no rest and water. And there's some slaughter laws, but both of these laws have lots of loopholes. And the slaughter law is that they're supposed to be, it's actually say insensitive to pain, which we know accidents happen and to the workers and to the animals, and there's a lot of suffering, especially because of the rates that they are trying to slaughter. And some of those were actually changed recently under the last administration to make it faster, which causes accidents for everyone. And in states themselves, you may have heard of the ag-gag laws. So these are actually doing the opposite. They're actually making it illegal for people like whistleblowers or people doing undercover reports to film or show these factory farms and show the reality of what's actually happening. Again, keeping it under wraps, keeping people far disconnected from where their food is really coming from. Now, there are some good news. There's some states with some laws now banning crates and also battery cages. So this map is showing states that have laws more in the last decade banning pig and veal crates. One thing to note, New Jersey right now has legislation pending, which should be called up for a vote. I've been working with a group. If you go to the website banthecrates.com, it's all of the organizations you've heard of, Humane Society, World Animal Protection, ASPCA, who have all signed on. And this is a law that already was brought up years ago, and you may or may not know, was vetoed twice by Chris Christie, even though it was supported by both houses in New Jersey. So it's up again. It just needs to be actually called up for a vote. So if anyone lives in New Jersey, you can call your legislators there to get that going. Now, I will say most of these states, you might realize, these are not big factory farming states. It's great they're doing this, but they're not battling the Midwest, where all of these CAFOs, and even Pennsylvania has a lot of CAFOs. So here in the middle, central, and eastern Pennsylvania, the darker means the more animals. So you can see Iowa, North Carolina are the two largest pork producers, and then all of these cattle lots all over the country. So, when you fly across the country now, it used to be like, oh, farms. And now I look down and I just see factories, because you see the sheds. They're just buildings with the pigs in them that don't even come outside. Or you see the lots with the cows, and obviously, like Iowa literally has more pigs live in Iowa than people. So it's big business. And of course, what is wrong with the CAFO? We all know that these are massive pollutants. They're bad for the environment. They increase greenhouse gases and climate change. There's so much water being used. The trucking that has to be done to and from these places, and the health impacts on the workers, the people down the chain eating this food because of all the antibiotics used. So it's a massive problem. So what can we do? So as I said earlier, the number one thing, of course, would be to remove meat from your diet and go vegan. And some think that's impossible. And on the flip side, some say that's the only solution. But that's why we're in the middle, and we can't just say that's the only solution, because not everyone can do that or is willing to do that, because it is very hard. It is ingrained in us, and we are, food and culture, and it's hard. And like I said, it's like an uphill battle, because for some reason it's flipped around, that it's like wrong when someone doesn't eat, which is a shame. So what we promote is to reduce your meat consumption just by cutting back, any percentage is helpful. You've all heard of Meatless Monday. So that's a great start. I, of course, think, it should be more than that. What about the flip? How about Meat Mondays? So then the rest of the week is meatless, or any variation of that. There's meat-free before 6. There's people that are flexitarians, reducitarians. There's a whole organization called the Reducitarian Foundation. And these are just labels. We're not huge fans of labels, because you can just do whatever you want to do, just some form of reduction. Also, if you're still eating meat, reject factory farm meat. So we kind of have this 3 R's: remove meat from your diet, reduce your meat consumption, and reject factory farm meat. So support more local, sustainable farmers. Shop at farmers markets, shop at the food co-op, where there will be a variety of meats from hopefully local farmers, and hopefully good labeling telling you where it's from. Just like when you go to a farmer's market and you can ask the farmer about his farm, what I think is the best way is to go to a farm in person if you can visit. I eat pasture-raised eggs, and my favorite thing to do is go to a local farm. It's actually in New Jersey, and I see the hens. They're outside running. They're being hens. I'm so happy about that, and they live pretty normal lives. So I know they're pasture-raised, and the eggs are pretty good price. They're cheaper than some of the pasture-raised ones at the supermarket. But conventional eggs, I really avoid. And also, I think something people talk about how expensive it can be. But if you're already reducing, you're saving money, because say you're just eating meat once a week and having a big Sunday meal. Well, you can spend a little more because you're not eating it 3 times a day, every meal. So I think there's a balance there. Like it used to be thought it was like steak, special, little more expensive meal. So you also, another thing to look at are labels, understanding labels. On our website, go to it. We have a whole page. So we're cratefreeusa.org, and we have a take action page, which I can put in the chat later. And we have some of these same things on here, how you can help. And if you scroll down, we talk about all the different labeling, because it is confusing and it is hard. Some labels are meaningless because they don't have to be, it's not like a legal label. For me, as far as eggs, I usually look for pasture because I don't want cage free, because that's not enough. That's still a factory farm. Organic does have some standards, but it doesn't have to do usually with animal welfare. They do not usually allow crates and cages, which is good, but organic isn't the same. So it just depends on, what you're looking for. So you can look on our site. Oops. Okay. Okay. And of course, you can contact your local grocers, stores, co-ops, supermarkets, and ask the managers where the food is, where the meat is from. Contact your legislators. If you want to host a screening to be part of the educating people, there's so many great documentaries out there. A few that I like, Food Inc. was a while back, very good one. Cowspiracy. Meet Me Halfway is one by the Reducitarian Foundation, and that is similar in that they are also saying reduce. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. At the Fork is another one. There's Vegucated. Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead is another great one. I've learned so much from all of these. Unfortunately, not enough people are seeing these or seeking them out to really educate themselves. Share this information with friends and family. Share stuff you see on social media. The only, way is to educate yourself. This is just a quick slide kind of showing all of the crazy labels with eggs. And this will be on YouTube, so you can look at it again. And some of this is on our website as well, just kind of explaining what some of them mean. And like I said, I just mostly look for pasture raised. At the store, there's eggs called Vital Farms that are at definitely Whole Foods. I think Target actually carries them. Quite a few stores carry them now, and they're pretty good. They are all pasture raised, and they work with a network of farmers. So we think, everyone can do something, and again, whether you're vegan, vegetarian, flexitarian, carnivore, omnivore, it doesn't matter. It's all about choices, and it does not have to be all. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any questions. I can't see the chat, so I'm not sure.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was incredibly informative and a lovely presentation. And I look forward to, looking into a lot of this myself, especially the eggs, because one doesn't realize how tricky they're getting with all the different labels. So yeah, if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can drop it in the chat. myself, Lisa, or Carol can make sure that that question is answered.
I have a quick question. So what is the difference between the reducerian or reductiarian and a flexitarian? Like,
Sure.
it would be the same.
Yeah, so Reducitarian is an actual organization that founded, came about in the last few years. The founder's name is Brian Cateman. He actually just spoke at an event of ours. He's great. He's from Staten Island. He did the documentary Meet Me Halfway, and it's really good. It covers all of this, and it's funny because he uses his parents as an example. They've never had an avocado. Does everyone here know what an avocado is? So he had them try guacamole. It's kind of like they were a great example of just like the standard American who, not always, doesn't matter necessarily the generation, but so he started Reducitarian for that reason, saying he saw, had this feeling that like people thought it was all or nothing, had to be vegans. So his mission and everything is all really just about reducing meat, replacing it with plant-based, with substitute, whatever, cell-based. He also writes for Forbes. He has got some great, interesting articles out there. So he also talks about all the cultured meat that's coming up, where they're creating real meat in a lab. So he's all about getting people to reduce their meat rather than telling them to go fully. So I would say that probably is pretty similar to flexitarian. That's flexible, I think, but a reducitarian, I think is about reducing where you're continuing to reduce. A flexitarian can do whatever, it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah,
that's what
right.
people always ask me. And now I sometimes say I'm mostly plant-based, but I'm not vegan either. I sometimes get a burger. I eat eggs. But I also have vegan A's in my fridge. And at home, I don't buy meat at all. I eat fish occasionally, but even all of that is reduced because I don't eat it much. So it's kind of whatever each person can do, and hopefully doing more and more.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm John. I like what you just said. I've been a vegetarian for a very, very long time and a vegan for some time, borderline vegan with cheese relapses. I'm powerless over cheese and my life has become unmanageable. But I think as some people on here who know me, as I often say, is, if you go on this adventure and if you go on this journey, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, do the best you can where you are with what you have.
Right.
If you decide to be something, it doesn't mean that, you have to stay on the straight and narrow, 100% of the time.
And that makes it harder, right? That
Yeah.
sometimes scares people from even trying a little. That's what our whole thing is, like, try a little. I mean, and you can just stop right there. Like, yeah, I totally 100% agree.
Yeah,
with you.
it's
But
don't be
that's
hard on
also part of
yourself.
the culture. Like, even a vegan, and you're a vegan now, so you probably hear that from other vegans, like, what's the big deal if occasionally, you
Have an omelet.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it is, you're still doing good by your health, by the animals, by the environment, by all the cutting back you've done, so that's why you could eat meat once a week, once a month, once a year, whatever it is, it's better than the average American.
And also the other thing too is, and I put this in the chat, another film that's worth investigating, although it deals with not on land, but in sea, Seaspiracy, about the effects of factory and industrial fishing practices and the effect that that's having on the ocean.
Yeah, there's so much that you saw. There was nothing about fish in our presentation. It is overwhelming. So we focus on the animals. Although fish, I think the numbers are pretty horrific as well. So yeah, I haven't actually watched that one yet. They're hard, and these are hard truths, right? These are hard things to watch, but it's real. So that's why I felt, I wanted to not hide from it anymore and educate myself. And I still can't, at least I know what's going on. I still can't watch certain films. They're too, the sounds, but it's what's really actually happening. So it's important to know.
Thank you.
Oh, Lisa, there's a couple comments in the chat. Catherine says, how do farms who free range or pasture raise protect their chickens from predators? And Matt did reply and say he can't speak for all farms, but he knows that many keep dogs, but perhaps you want to address that.
That's, and I'm not a farmer, so I can't speak to all of that. But the place that I do buy my eggs, they have dogs. And then they have huts that they keep the chickens in at night. So, and they move them around. And so I assume this is like many of these farms. And of course, these are smaller farms. It's harder. They don't get the government subsidies. They don't get, to make money in farm. These are farms like around here that rely on CSAs and consumers and farmers markets so they can sell directly, as opposed to working with these huge companies like Smithfield, Conagra, JBS, and these massive, because also now the farms, the big farms, factory farms in the country are like owned by like 4 companies now. It's consolidated, and the number of animals has gone up that they're farming because they found ways to farm so many, but it's only owned by like a few corporations now. So it's not good.
This isn't a question, but kind of an observation or aha moment, but you talked about how stressful the animals' lives are. And then it just made me wonder, does that stress get passed on, to us, the consumers?
Some say it does. I have read things about that. The need, just a life like that. There's cortisol, there's all kinds of chemicals, running through their bodies, and their life is miserable. So, they do say that difference even in a pasture raised egg, the yolk color and everything, as opposed to like a factory battery cage egg is the pasture ones is more orange, more rich, and the others just kind of runny and yellow. And I just know I don't like I love my pets. When I realize what's happening to these animals, it's hard to just disconnect from it and pretend, well, whatever, it's, yeah. And it's, of course, even if you don't care about animals, it's again, good for your health, good for the environment. There's so many, and the workers at these places there's some horrible, and of course, during COVID, people were getting sick at these factories, and there's also illnesses that can pass, as you all know, from the animal, zoonotic diseases between the animals. So we could go on, forever. There's so many different issues with what's happening in factory farming.
So one thing I would like to see in the co-op is, I know a lot of co-ops have like recipe cards and things like that to make suggestions on, what to buy. Sometimes, to make it easy to have a dinner for 4 at a fairly low cost, but they also can direct it to vegan meals or vegetarian meals and, have that available. I've tried very hard to, do mostly vegetarian, not vegan, but I hardly ate any meat. And I thought I was getting enough protein, but my numbers are so low for protein. My doctor's like, please eat some meat, even if it's just a little. So I did start incorporating a little bit more, not much, but some, and trying harder to bring more protein in. So that was frustrating because obviously I don't know enough on how to eat without any meat and actually have enough protein in my body, so so it's frustrating because there's a lot of health concerns with that.
Yeah, it's interesting because one thing I always hear is that it's very rare, also kind of talked about a lot, how do you get your protein? And that's usually not a concern, a deficiency in protein. And
Wow.
You know, like I do eat eggs, so I eat almost an egg a day, and that's like we don't need massive amounts of protein. And of course, as you know, beans, spinach has protein, quinoa has protein.
Yeah.
A lot of the substitutes have protein, but a lot of vegetables and grains have good protein.
Yeah. I don't
Plus
know.
the
The numbers
B12.
were low.
Yeah, I take a vitamin B12 every day. Usually, not a lot of vegans do that because you can get a lot of things you need that you're lacking that can't be replicated. In fact, but at least, I mean, you're finding your balance, so you know, and that's kind of what this is
Right.
all.
About. Yeah. Just eat a lot less. And I do. But, hmm. So out of those movies, which one would you recommend the most? Because I don't have time to watch all those movies.
Oh gosh, I think it's been so long. I think one of the first ones I watched was Food Inc. But I would also recommend, if you're a reader, Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan, who is a New York Times writer, and I think he teaches at NYU now or Stanford. He's a great writer, journalist, and he kind of covered the whole food system. I think the recent one, Meet Me Halfway, was really good because he also covers a lot from the animals, the environment. Yeah, and Food Inc. was a big, those are three. It's hard to just do, but it's been a long time since I saw that.
Mhm.
This one, it's not on my list, but it was called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. I think that's more about going vegan. It's through the health lens, and it really showed all these people who had diseases and they were taking all these pharmaceuticals, and then they went vegan and their illnesses, they got better, and just showing, you know, I mean, what is it called? The China study, which showed how when our American diets finally started replicating over in China, that the cancer rates went up in China, and just showing, you know, the health issues of too much meat.
Mm.
Any other questions?
We have a comment here called, it's from Catherine Johns. I believe Kiss the Ground on Netflix also incorporates smart farming by having the animals do insect control before planting seeds. So that's another one to check out. Kiss the Ground on Netflix.
It's on my list. It's on my watch list. I haven't seen that one yet, but I've heard good things. You know, and in that book, Omnivore's Dilemma, I think it was that one, they talk about all of that, like even the soil and how we've kind of messed up the soil with these farms. And also, I didn't even mention, I mean, again, we could go on forever, but how much of this, so we have all these factory farms, but then how many of our farms in the country are corn and soy, which is mostly being raised and consumed by livestock. So a lot of our land is just kind of like, you know, all the prairie and the trees have gone because we need more space to grow more food, that is to feed our food, basically feed the animals. And yeah, so the soils degraded, and you know, these other good farmers, rotational farmers, regenerative farmers are using, like the hens, how they're moving them around each day, you know, and then their manure is going back into the soil, and then they're you know, just doing all the right systems so everything kind of works together as it should. And again, I'm not a farmer or farm expert, so.
This is anecdotal, but I did hear a discussion on NPR, and they were talking about the water crisis in the west part of the country. And it's really exacerbated by the factory farms. And also, apparently, they grow alfalfa, and it's a very water intensive crop. And they grow the alfalfa for the factory farms. And the observation by the author of this book was that if the people in the western half of the country, if everybody did Meatless Monday, that is just reduced by 1 day a week, they'd have plenty of water for the whole west half of the country. And that really stuck with me, that just that one change could turn a really severe problem, just turn it completely around.
Exactly. That's why the whole reducing, it can be a big, much bigger impact than saying, well, I can't become vegan and never. Yeah, 1 day a week.
I would say if this was in the 1970s, there would be public, the broadcast commercials about stuff like this. Like the idea of conserving water by switching to 1 day, whatever. And they just don't do things like that anymore to promote, things that are good for the entire country or the entire community or.
Yeah, it's about money. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I know.
It's a money thing. If nobody makes money at it, they won't do it.
The
Well-
pork council, the beef industry, they have such power on our politicians, especially in those states that they donate,
Yeah.
it's all about that. And it's like many other things, as I'm sure you're all aware. So
Right.
it's frustrating and scary that that's kind of how our system is all connected. Which again is why it's harder to know about this stuff or be educated about it. Or some people say, really, I'm sure those are just a few bad farms. No, this is how it's run. This is how most, nearly all your meat at most all supermarkets is run. Doesn't
I
look
think-
like pigs on the screen.
Also too, many factory farms and more specifically the slaughterhouses employ a significant number of illegal immigrants and specifically underage children who are not eligible for working papers. And because they're illegals, they're severely taken disadvantage of. They're paid very low wages. There was recently an extended series in the New York Times, specifically dealing with the underage children working in the slaughterhouses and the factory farms, and the things that they're exposed to in terms of injuries, chemicals, etc. And these people have no recourse because if they do, they're afraid that they will be deported.
It's an awful
Sadly,
industry from the top to the bottom. I mean, yeah.
And there are states working to even lower the ages now of what
Mhm.
ages children can work instead of
Exactly.
just going backwards.
And if the workers are, and in general, when the workers are also treated this badly, and like you said, accidents from young people, everyone, diseases, long-term health issues, and a desensitization of violence of what they're doing there. And if they're treated bad, you can imagine that they don't give a crap of how the animals are treated. They're just widgets. It's horrible.
This is depressing. This is depressing. We need to end on a
I
high
liked
note.
Kathy's, what she was saying. I totally agree. Like there's some great, I think Meatless Mondays, I think on there, I think they have a website. There's all the organizations have tons of, like Reducitarian, if you follow them on Instagram or Google Meatless Monday, there's recipes left and right, especially for people looking to go vegan or reduce. There's tons of recipes out there. We also work with an organization called Farm Forward, great organization. It's very similar. They're trying to, they're about, and also Food and Water Watch. We work with them, so more about the environment. But Farm Forward has a program that they're working with like Aramark and lots of schools to start a program called Default Veg, which again, to me, it's almost makes perfect sense. Just like it should make sense that that I'm a good person because I don't want to eat meat and harm animals. It shouldn't be seen the opposite. The same thing with Default Veg. Why can't we just have like more menus and more school menus or corporate menus to begin with that are default veg. And if you want to add meat, you can add it, which we see sometimes with salads and things like that. But you go to like a local kind of bar or restaurant, sometimes I'm like, oh, there's really, and again, I did just move here from Chicago, from a bigger city where there were a lot more options, and it was maybe a little more normal or mainstream. Many restaurants in the city, lots of vegan options, very kind of normal. So some places that are smaller cities are working on it, but I'll go to somewhere and it's just really notice how everything is chicken, like instead of like maybe just show the base plate and you can add meat. Why, that it's always, meat is always the default. Even if say you're having a wedding and you're not gonna have meat, you're like, oh my gosh, well, why can't they just be the default that it's vegetarian first? That seems like that it offends some people.
Well, I know a great place where there's lots of recipes. Your local library. We have lots and lots of great titles, vegan, vegetarian, etc. We also have a new database called A to Z World Foods, which has a host of different recipe books, tutorial videos. It has cuisine from all over the world, and of course, as I'm sure everybody here knows, a lot of other cultures in the world do not eat meat as much as we do. So there are quite a number of amazing recipes on that website. You go through our library website, babbel.org, and you can go through the databases, the research and learning tab, and that's right there, free with your library card. So that's that's my extra insert of your local library commercial. So
Very good. Well, I can vouch for the cookbook section because you need to pack a lunch before you hit that section. It's huge. But to your point, cooking at home isn't the challenge for me. It's when I go out. And like Lisa said, you go out, and especially if you're trying to do vegan, they take the meat out and there's cheese on everything. Or they might have one vegetarian option. Or if you want something fast, and 10 years ago your default was to drive through McDonald's, if you need something fast, there aren't really very many options at all. And that, for me personally, is that's where I run into trouble. When I'm at home, I'm fine, but when I'm out and about, it is much more challenging. And I'm not on top of things enough to, pack my own, if I get in a time crunch. So.
well, this has been a wonderful discussion, wonderful presentation. We have a comment from John here. Michael Pollan is famous for always saying, eat food, mostly vegetables.
Eat real food, yeah. Eat plants. So he says.
I think so, yeah. And Chris Bartleson recommended Organic Manifesto by Maria Rodale, and she's of the Rodale family that started the Rodale Institute. So it's another good one.
So thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you, Carol, for putting this together. I know, Carol, you wanted to say something at the end. So Lisa, if anybody wanted to get a hold of you or find more information out, they could go to cratefreeusa.org.
Yeah, you can go to the website for any info. If you want to reach me directly, you can go to lisa@cratefreeusa.org. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you. I just put your email up for everybody. So I just want to remind everybody that the recording of this will be put up on the library's website. That's wrong. The library's YouTube channel. And Matt will send everybody an email to say, hey, it's up, so you can access it. And I will commit to getting all of our library series videos posted on our website the co-op's website, so they're easy to access because you can go back and look at any of the different programs we've offered. And we've been really fortunate to have some really good presenters over these past 2 years. So the other quick commercial is there is a lot of info on our website. We also send out the newsletter every couple weeks. We keep a lot of information out on social. So I just encourage you to keep watching our news. We have a lot of exciting things going on. The building's going up at 250 East Broad. Really looks like a building now, and we'll be on the ground floor. And if all goes well, hopefully we can all be shopping together by the end of the year. And the other exciting news is that we've hired our first employee, our new general manager, Eric Shamus, who I think is on our call, is starting May 1st. So that's a really exciting milestone for us as a co-op. And if you're not already involved, we encourage you to get involved, but mostly we just want everybody to know what we're up to so you can help advocate out in the community. So we got a couple thank yous, and we appreciate you all coming tonight. Thank you.